This video is going to be on kind of welding career exploration. I'm going to kind of go over how I got in the field and then go over some different paths that you can take to get in the welding field depending on where you want to go. Kind of decides what path you're going to take, right? So I'm going to start out with myself. I grew up in Western New York. Everybody thinks that if you're from New York, you're from New York City. Western New York is really a very rural area, and I started welding when I was like 12, 14, something like that, at my buddy's dairy farm. So I grew up kind of out in the country, working in the farm country, things like that. I graduated from Randolph Central School, which is a small school out almost on the PA border. I did do some formal welding in high school in an ag program, so we did a little bit of welding in the ag program. For the most part, I was just messing around on the farm with welders when I probably wasn't supposed to be, and that's how I kind of got my start in welding. Upon graduation from high school, I was heavily recruited for track and field. I was a pole vaulter, believe it or not, and I went to a college and they had welding listed, and I didn't really care about the major. I thought I was going for athletics, and the coach said, what are you going to do for a major? And I said, I don't know. And he kind of gave me the list, and I saw welding, so I took welding, and it was an AOS program. An AOS program, you basically go in and just weld. You don't take any math, English, very small requirements outside of the welding area, all right? There's also an AAS, and that is when you go for a degree and you take math, English, social science electives, gen eds, and all that stuff. So I went for an AOS because I really wasn't interested in that stuff, and it kind of bit me in the end, but it just made me have to go to school for another year is all. And I'm going to kind of go over that path here in a little bit. But I graduated with my associates. Let me think how this worked. I had won a national championship for track, and I had tore my hamstring, and I needed to rehab it for over a year. I was looking at going into a bachelor's in welding and engineering, but because I went in AOS, I didn't have any of the gen eds that were required, so I had to go for an entire year just taking math, English, and the other stuff I had previously mentioned. The only good thing was I did tear my hamstring, so I had to rehab that for the year. Anyways, so I went to a community college, got all that stuff to transfer into the bachelor's. During my college career, I was always in the field welding. I maintained employment the entire time throughout my education. That's a very critical thing, I would say, because you have to get in the field and get experience. That's when you really learn how to weld. You go to college, you learn all the welding processes really widely, but about this deep, right? When you learn to weld, it's when you're in the field doing it every single day, 40, 60, 70 hours a week. That's when you really learn to weld. So I was maintaining employment while I was going to school the entire time. And then, of course, when I had my year where I went to a community college to rehab my leg and also get my gen eds in, I welded in a fab shop the entire time. It was in between my freshman and my sophomore year was when I decided I was going to go on for my bachelor's in welding engineering. I was doing stainless steel floor grades, I believe, and it was slide it down, zap it up, slide it away. Slide it down, zap it, slide it away. Production, heavy production. And it was so boring. I just knew that I had to move on and do something better. I wasn't going to be a production welder. I knew that in between my freshman and sophomore year. So anyways, I worked in the fab shop in between my sophomore and junior year for an entire year. It was actually more than a year, it was like a year and a half. Then I transferred to Ferris State University in Michigan to get my bachelor's in welding engineering technology. So while I was there, I was learning a lot of stuff that's more higher end engineering stuff, robotics, just a lot of stuff that if you don't do there's a difference between engineering science and engineering technology as well. Engineering technology, which is what I went into, you go up to calculus. So you don't go into Calc 3 and Diffie-Qs and all that other stuff. So I would say that if you're pretty smart and you're in the welding field and you want to make a lot of money and you want to move up fast, I would go into a bachelor's in welding engineering like I did, all right? It's the way to go. I graduated from my bachelor's. Let me think how this went. I came back, and this area where I'm from is very, they didn't really know what a welding engineer was, let's just put it that way. So I came back, and I ended up production welding, working in fab shops, welding in the field, And the whole time I was kind of regretting going to get my bachelor's because I thought this is not what I signed up for. But I came back to my area, which was a little bit behind in the times. If I would have moved, I could have got a welding engineering job right off the bat. But I came back to my area. I didn't really have a place to live, so I was just welding and just trying to find my way, I guess. There's a college locally that started an associate's in applied science and welding technology that I learned about when I was in Michigan. They called me, I came back, and I started doing some adjuncting on the side while I was still in the field. I ended up, after however long it was, becoming a full-time faculty member at the college. So I got hired, I still have my bachelor's at this point. They have a master's requirement, and there was no way I wanted to get a master's degree. But again, you don't know where you're going to end up. So they ended up putting me in a master's program. I ended up getting a master's degree. During that time, I obtained my CWI. I think I was 24 or 5 when I got my CWI. That's a goal that most welders should have if they got formal education, in my opinion. But so I had my CWI, my bachelor's at this point. Then they made me get my master's, so I got a master's degree. I'm currently still the instructor there, or my official title is associate professor in the AAS program, so I kind of run the welding program. And that's kind of the journey that I took. Within that, I started my own business with my CWI work, my welding engineering, and I go out into companies and do consulting on the side. And this was one of my goals, to stay current with what's happening within the welding field. I didn't want to get stale. I wanted to make sure that the program is continuing to, meet industry current needs and future needs. So we have to kind of forecast that, and the way I do that is I have my own business where I go out in the field. So in the summer when there's no classes, I don't get the summer off. I'm out working and out in companies, making sure that our program is where it needs to be. So that's kind of how I got to where I am. I'm going to move now into some paths. I got them drawn up on the whiteboard here of ways you can take to get your welding career started and finished, depending on where you want to go. So I drew up 3 paths, I believe, and we'll take a look at them now. And then at the end, I'll go over some just general advice to give the people that are getting into the welding field that are graduating in 2024. All right, let's get to the whiteboard. All right, I forgot to mention the college that I actually work at. It's Jamestown Community College in Jamestown, New York. And I promise you, if you enroll and you have goals, high-end goals in the welding field, will get you to where you need to be, all right? So let's kind of take a look up here at the paths that I kind of wrote down, and they can vary, all right, depending on how good you are and how motivated you are and things like that. So path number 1, high school, right into welding, all right? There's nothing wrong with this, all right? There's people that graduate high school, they go into welding, they learn on the job, and they love it. They have a good life, they make a lot of money, and they're good employees, all right? The problem with that is if you want to go anywhere else after that, all right? It is possible, so I got arrows drawn here, right? So let's say you choose path 1, you weld for a little bit, and then you decide, you know what, I want to get my CWI because I like the aspect of inspection, my eyes are getting bad, whatever the reason is. You now have to move into a CWI, right? The problem with that is the CWI exam is very difficult to pass. And if you've had no formal education, it's very hard to pass the CWI exam based off of work experience, in my opinion. Just my opinion, all right? The best way to pass the CWI exam is to have a formal education over here, and then work under a CWI. That's the best way, all right? But you can do it. It's possible to do it if you study real hard. And I started up a shorts playlist on my YouTube station where it'll say like gas metal arc welding questions number 1. And I do a question every day that is based off of potential CWI exam questions, all right? So if you look at my playlists and you see questions 1 for stick, questions 2 for stick, questions 3, all that are questions that are on a test within the college program. So you can put it on in your car and just continually go over all these questions while you're driving or whatever, and potentially learn how to pass the CWI exam, all right? You could also go down into an AOS or a trade school after you've been welding for a little while. That's going to most likely require you to, get out of the field, go get, enrolled in those schools and then move forward to your CWI, depending on what you want to do, okay? So path 1, directly into the welding. You could go as far as going into an AAS in the CWI and then moving all the way over to a bachelor's if you want to do that. I'd suggest doing that when you're like 18 to 25. It's harder to do when you've been in the field for a long time and all of a sudden you look down, you're 45 years old and you're like, you know what, I want to move up. Now you got to go back and catch up in your academics and things, all right? So let's go to path 2, high school, AOS, or trade school. This is kind of what I did right here. I went into an AOS, all right? Then you go to the field after that, and like I said, one of the important things is make sure you're getting in the field as soon as possible. So while you're going to school, I'd be looking for a welding job, right? Okay, so you graduate AOS, trade school, you can either just go in the field and start welding, right? And then if you wanted to go into a CWI, so I got a question mark going up here later, you're going to be prepared to do the fundamentals of welding part of it, right? You might have some code work if you've been in the field, all right? So you're in pretty good shape to go take the CWI exam, in my opinion, with an AOS or a trade school education, all right? But let's say you want to go into bachelor's, like what happened to me. I'm going to have to go into the 1 year of college, and I placed into college level math, college level English. If you're behind a little bit, you're going to have to take some remediation. It might take you 2 years, who knows? But a minimum of 1 year of college before you go into a welding engineering program, all right? So that's that kind of path to a welding engineering, to the CWI, or just into the field of welding, all right? Path number 3, high school. You're going into an AAS, all right? So now you're taking all the stuff that you have to take if you're going to ever go into a bachelor's, all right? So with an AAS, and I know that, see, I wrote this down here. You don't know where you will end up. You got to keep that in mind when you're 18, 19, 20. You think, I would have never thought I was going to get a bachelor's because I just didn't like school like other people did. So, but it took me into a bachelor's. And I can honestly say if I wasn't in athletics, I probably wouldn't have went into a bachelor's. But I was in athletics and it took me into a bachelor's. So keep this attitude right here. You don't know where you will end up. Keep that in your mind, I guess. Because you don't. You don't know if you're ever going to end up in a bachelor's. If you go into an AAS, you graduate, even if you didn't like welding for whatever reason, you still could transfer into a bachelor's in something else and you're ready to go. You're going to transfer somewhat seamlessly and not have to take a lot of coursework. With an AOS, you're going to have to take at least a year of college, all right? So path 3, let's go back to that. You can go into your AAS. A lot of my AAS graduates end up as CWIs. I mean, we've kind of tailored our coursework to making sure that we have code work in it, certifications, how things are certified, or how people are certified, how processes are certified. That's all in our coursework because we want to make sure that they're ready to take the CWI exam once they get their field work experience. To take the CWI exam, you have to have a certain number of years in the field to even be eligible, right? When you get an associate's, it lowers the number of years in the field. Bachelor's, it takes it down to 1, all right? So you can go right down into a CWI once you get your field work done. You're ready for that with an AAS, or if you go into a bachelor's in welding engineering, you will transfer seamlessly into that, all right? So when you get your AAS, you can just go right into a bachelor's in welding engineering, all right? Now the path that I took was, I went high school, AOS, I did my year, then I went into a bachelor's in welding engineering, and then I just kind of drew down from where I went into a CWI and then a master's, all right? So that's kind of the 3 paths of how you can get into the welding field, I guess, all the way up to a bachelor's in welding engineering, which I think most people would agree that if you get a bachelor's in welding engineering, you're really at the top of the welding world, really. I mean, you can go on and get a master's at Ohio State. They have a master's program, or they used to. I don't know if they still do, but and you can even go as far as a PhD, I believe, at Ohio State. But for the most part, this is pretty high up in the welding field. When you graduate from your bachelor's in welding engineering, you're going to make a good wage after only 4 years if you go this path right here. 4 years. And people who graduate in high school think 4 years is like this huge amount of time. It's nothing in the grand scheme of things, all right? Mine, it took me 5 because I went this path, all right? So that's kind of the 3 paths that I kind of mapped up as far as I see it, as far as how you get into welding. Now let's get into, I'm going to roll this up. Okay, we're back. I kind of messed up at the end there. So anyways, these are just my general tips that I wrote down off the top of my head If you're or getting into the welding field, maybe you're just graduating high school and up, these are my tips for you. With an associate's degree, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most knowledge and skill you'll ever have in welding. So you're maxed out in your life in welding skill and knowledge is a 10. When you graduate with your associates, you're at like a 1, and if you worked in the field, maybe a 2. People that graduate think they know everything. You don't. You're at like a 1 or a 2. You're going to gain most of your welding knowledge in the field, all right? And I'm not kidding. People don't believe me, but they come back later and they say, you're right, I didn't know anything when I was graduating with my associates, which you know quite a bit. It's just you learn a lot more in the field. And usually when you get in the field, you're specified on one process, maybe 2. You're going to do a lot of MIG welding, a lot of TIG welding, or just stick welding. Most people aren't stick welding unless you're a pipeliner or you're in construction or maintenance, right? So that's why you get a lot of your knowledge once you get in the field, because you focus on one thing instead of all these processes that you're learning at the school. What the school does, it preps you to be a good entry-level employee, all right, in any of those processes. But once you get in the field, you're going to focus on 1 or 2 processes for the most part. Realistic money expectations. Let's bring this back. People think they're going to make $100,000 a year coming out with an associate's degree. You're not. Realistically, if you graduate from an AOS, even AAS, or a trade school, you're going to probably start around $20 to $25 an hour. That's what it's going to be, all right? With your bachelor's, you're going to move way up. You're probably going to go into a salary range. I don't know what the average salary is for starting. I did look up the median range for welding engineers, and median range means 10 to 15 years in the field. You're going to be at around $100,000 a year, all right? Starting out, I would say, I think my graduating class in 2005, it was like 60, 65. That was a long time ago, so I don't know what it is now. But so those are just kind of the realistic money expectations. You're not going to come out of a trade school or out of an associate's program and make $100,000. If you do, you're exceptional, all right? So have realistic money expectations. Get in the field as soon as possible. I've said that throughout this video, right? As soon as you can get in, because that's where you're going to gain all that experience, right? And the other thing is, if you're seeing stuff in the field while you're going to school, you can come ask your instructors questions, right? I was doing this and they did it this way. What do you think about that? And you can actually, ask the questions in the school about your job and come back as a good employee, right? Where am I at? Learn from the older welders. This is a big one. Learn from the older welders. These are the people that know what they're doing in the field, all right? So you want to make sure that you learn from the older welders. Don't go in there with the attitude that you know everything. Be humble and learn from the older welders. And it goes right back to this too. Find a mentor. So within the older employees, the more experienced I should say, find somebody that you can learn from and kind of work under them, all right? Because they're the ones that are going to teach you all those tips and tricks that they don't teach you at school, right? Don't be arrogant. We kind of went over that already. Don't have this attitude like you went to school, you're better than people. If you do that, the older people are not going to help you at all, I guarantee it. Welders are very confident individuals. They walk with a little bit of a limp, right? Because they're confident. But their confidence is at the level where it's almost to the point of arrogance. You want to be just below arrogance. You want to be confident but not arrogant, right? And certainly don't be anywhere near arrogant when you're talking about older people that are in the field or more experienced people. And then I wrote it down here. Get over. Okay, so get over. When you're going through schooling, I hear it all the time. This is stupid. I'm never going to use this. Get over it, all right? You're going to have to take stuff that you may never use in life. Even in the welding field, like I said earlier, if you're going over TIG, MIG, stick, and flux core, you're probably never going to use one of those processes if you get in the welding field and you're focused on certain products, certain processes, right? But there's certain things, if you get an associate's degree and you have to take something like sociology, for instance, you really got to get past the fact that you have to take sociology and you don't want to, let's say you don't want to take sociology. It's required by the degree, so get over it. There's no point in complaining. Get in there, get an A in the class, and move on, all right? So that's my tips, my paths, That's all I got today. Thanks for watching, subscribing to TV Weld, and we'll see you next time. And if you need any help moving forward in your path, whatever path you take, feel free to send me some contact info, and I'll get back to you.